Hi QA folks, the topic for today's video is what is a test strategy as a document, what is a test plan, and what is the difference between them. So let's start with test strategy. So as a document, test strategy usually describes how the application will be tested in terms of how the testing will be organized into phases or cycles if needed, and what testing types will be in scope to address product risks. This document usually contains following sections: approach and methodologies. Methodologies might be white box testing, black box testing, and mixed gray box testing. Scope of testing, for example, here you can put that performance testing is not going to be performed, or some specific types of testing will not be conducted. So in a broad understanding of scope of testing. Next, you would describe types of testing that are going to be performed, like functional, performance, security, and so on. Levels of testing, unit integration system. For example, you can write that developers will be writing and running unit tests, and QA team will cover integration and system levels of testing. Testing tools, what are you going to use? Like for example, for API testing, you might want to mention that all API tests should be stored in Postman collections, and you are going to use Postman for API testing. Or if you are going to write API tests in your test automation directly using something like Playwright or whatever. Next one, approach to test automation. Sometimes for some specific projects, you are not going to do any kind of test automation. If it's a really small one-time project, then you are going to just test everything manually, probably, again. But here, as a part of test strategy, you are going to describe if you are going to use any test automation at all, and if you're going to use it, what approach you're going to use. For example, it can be keyword-driven development or data-driven approach. So you should describe overall approach for test automation. Next, risks and mitigation. It might be some technical risk, project risks, people risks. Some team members might got sick or something and missing for some time. So usually you cover all those kind of risks, and to have some mitigation plan in place. Next, test environments requirements. If you are going to use few test environments, like for example, dev environment, QA environment, some staging, UAT, and so on. So how many you are going to use for which purposes, and what are your requirements for those, even there will be any specifics. Test data management, who is going to maintain test environment, who is going to create data. Next, testing requirements in terms of releases of deployments, frequency. For example, you might want fixes to be deployed like every day or every other day, or once a week, once a month, whatever will work for you. And acceptance criteria and readiness for testing. For example, you can specify that you are going to accept only the build, for testing only the build that will have all tests and smoke test passed. If not that, it should go back to developers for fixes. This kind of acceptance criteria for testing, to start testing activities. So again, the strategy, it's a document that describes overall approach about scope of testing, types of testing, and some approaches like for test automation, for example. Here Test strategy is a high-level conceptual overview of the approach to testing, while a test plan is a detailed, practical guide outlining specific testing activities, tasks, scope and timeline. Now let's take a look at test plan as a document. So it focuses more on resources and schedule. As I already mentioned, required to implement test strategy for a particular release or project. It describes how the testing team is going to organize and perform the testing activities. And usually inside it you would describe roles and responsibilities. For example, what will be responsibilities of QA engineer, senior QA engineer, developers, product owner, and so on, those kind of roles and responsibilities. Resources needed, how many test engineers do you need to conduct testing within a specified timeline, what specific hardware and software do you need to have in order to perform those testing activities. Test environment specifications, again, if there are some specific requirements, or if you are building the project from scratch, some DevOps or IT managers would want to have some kind of specifications from you in terms of test environments resources, because usually it's much less than production resources, because it's usually costly to have it one-to-one in terms of resources and specifications. Next one, schedule. Again, if you are going to perform testing in few cycles, for example, if you are going to receive one major build once a month, then you would want to plan some specific schedule, or to have specific schedule in place, that you are going to perform cycle 1 testing within first month, cycle 2, and so on after each major build. Excuse me. That kind of schedule and resources. Now, test design and execution approaches for each testing type. Scope of work, what's included, what's not, again, in terms of performance testing, security testing, or any other specific. Test cases to be executed, if you already have them, you should include table with all test cases, at least high level overview. Acceptance criteria for tasks. Again, risk assessment, bug severity definitions, so everyone would understand what high level or blocker severity means. And test documentation, deliverables, and reporting, how you are going to, what kind of documentation you are going to produce. Even test cases can be considered as a produced documentation, right? Are you going to provide test summary reports? How often you are going to report the test results? Daily, weekly, monthly, whatever. So that kind of information or practical application of test strategy for specific release or specific project with resources and schedule, this is the focus of test plan document. Okay. Now, again, major difference that test strategy is focused more on approaches and methodologies, types of testing, and test plan is on resources and schedule. I hope it helps. See you in the next video.